minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction, in the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning, death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind.
Welcome to the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia on the National Community Radio Satellite. Listen to the Anarchist World This Week, Australia's sacred cow slaughterhouse. Listen to analysis of local, national, international events. Listen to analysis you'll never hear anywhere else.
Welcome to the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia via the Community Radio Network. This program is streaming live on 3cr.org.au. If you go to Lurgy, you need to go to the toilets, somebody wants to borrow a cup of sugar, or you fall asleep listening to the Anarchist World This Week, don't despair. The program is podcast. You can access it for a few months by going to 3cr.org.au. And you're wondering what anarchy is all about? No, I had to laugh. I really had to laugh. I don't laugh often, especially at the Murdoch press, you know, that the gutter press, the yellow press, yellow for coward, not for the type of paper they use. But I think one day this week, could have been Monday, or maybe it was yesterday. I'm not sure, I can't remember. Front page, mayhem. Further in, Occupy. And then anarchy, all in big letters. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But that's the way life pans out. Now, if you wonder what anarchy is all about, it's not what's in the Murdoch press. That's garbage, all right? It's garbage not even fit to be composted. That's the problem. An anarchist society is a society without rulers. Anarchos without rulers. It's a society where wealth is held in common and used for the common good. It's a society where decisions are made by the people which a decision affects. That's the direct democratic principles. And where delegates are appointed or elected to try to carry out those decisions at a local, regional and national level. You notice I didn't use the word state. Artificial creations. So it's a society without rulers. So how do you get a society without rulers? You devolve power, you share wealth. It's simple. You don't need a PhD from a sandstone university. You don't need to surf the net. Very simple concepts. Now, first of all, I'd like to thank all those people who attended the Reclaim the Radical Spirit of the Eureka Rebellion celebrations, which were held in Ballarat by the Anarchist Media Institute on Sunday the 3rd of December. We had people from interstate, locals, and obviously people from regional Victoria as well as Melbourne. So it was a great day. 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'd like to congratulate all those people who did the stations of Eureka. I mean, very little happens in Ballarat on Eureka Day. It's an extraordinary city, Ballarat. It really is. I mean, I was admonished for taking the mickey out of Ballarat, but that's the way life goes. You drive into Ballarat on the 3rd of December, or the 2nd. No banners saying, Happy Eureka Day. Welcome Eureka Day. No banners. You drive through the city, no flags, no Eureka flags. Occasionally one will pop up on a business. You go down to the town hall, no Eureka flag on the main flagpole. You look for activities apart from the activities that we've organised, a lecture that was organised by the Museum of Australian Democracy at Eureka. Nothing. Dead. And this was a Sunday. No excuses. No excuses. I find it extraordinary. This is a city which for 163 years, especially in the last 50 years, since the Eureka Rebellion circumstances have come back into public prominence, which uses the symbols of Eureka to promote its interests and privately owned organisations use the symbol of Eureka to promote their bottom line. Right? They use the symbols, the flag, a stylised form of flag, the name. And when it comes to the 3rd of December, nothing from these organisations, nothing from the Ballarat City Council, nothing from businesses, nothing. Just extraordinary. Appropriate the symbols of resistance, appropriate the symbols, and do not pay their dues on the day. But when you think of the way Australia began with European colonisation, well, you know, we murdered the locals, stole their land, you begin to understand that this seems to be a common practice. So we will be launching a campaign early next year, a campaign where we will be contacting all the businesses and institutions which use the Eureka symbols and ask them, what will you be doing to pay your dues on the 3rd of December? We'll be holding a public event. Will you be having a barbecue? Free barbecue for people? It makes sense, doesn't it? Extraordinary. But if the people of Ballarat take umbrage, I'm quite happy to debate the question because it is a disgrace. It is a national disgrace. It's a national disgrace how little emphasis is placed on the Eureka Rebellion around Australia. But it's a greater disgrace that where the bodies of the people who died fighting for the inalienable rights and liberties which they believe they were born with 163 years ago, lie in an unmarked mass grave, and that city cannot mark the day in an appropriate way. I'm not saying they don't mark the day, especially when it falls on a weekend. They love to mark the day, but very little happens. Now, talking about disgraces, well, it's interesting, isn't it? The ALP, the Victorian ALP, was shocked. You like that word? Shocked. Shocked. They lost the unlosable election in the Northcote by-election to the Greens. They were shocked. Didn't expect it. Couldn't believe it. What's happened? We're building so many roads. So many tunnels. Doesn't anybody love us? You have to laugh. You really have to laugh as if, that was Mussolini's line. Make the trains run on time, build some grandiose buildings, forget about the bloody people. So, you see, I know this is unfashionable in 2017, but we do live in a community, and public facilities and public spaces are exceptionally important, especially in a community that's becoming a little bit, congested. Lots of people rubbing shoulders in a city of 4.5 million people. And it's quite extraordinary that this government, a supposedly Labor government, although, as you know, the ALP no longer stands for the Australian Labor Party, it actually stands for the Alternative Liberal Party. And if you doubt me, just have a look at their policies and you'll see what I'm talking about. When they're in opposition, they kind of fly the flag up. When they get into government, they do the bidding of the corporate sector. Now, before I get into the public housing issue, there are 3,000 group homes in Victoria, and most of them are publicly owned, publicly run, publicly managed. You know what a group home is? It's a home where people who've got major intellectual difficulties, major physical difficulties, major social issues, who can't live anywhere else, live in a home of 2, 3 or 4 other people, right? Where services are provided on a 24-hour basis. It is a product of the deinstitutionalisation, the breakdown of the huge asylums that were around. So it was an idea to decentralise the institutions and make living for people with extraordinary physical, intellectual and social difficulties much more than just, feeding them and washing them. Well, there are 3,000 group homes in Victoria. You know what the Labor government policy is? See, the thing is, I don't have to lie. I don't have to make up fake news on the Anarchist World This Week, because everything I say, I can back up. The Australian Labor Party's policy in Victoria is to privatise the group homes. And they've recently called for expressions of interest, which have now closed, for privately owned organisations to manage and own, in some circumstances, these group homes. So how do you solve the problem? You wash your hands of it. You give it to the private sector, and then you can say, oh, woe is me. We have all these regulations and these nasty people can't provide the care that's needed. Extraordinary. And again, I don't need to make it up. Now let's get down to public housing. Now, on Wednesday the 13th of December is the last sitting day of the Victorian Parliament for 2017. Not forever. Not forever. I don't think there's been a revolutionary upheaval is going to occur on the Wednesday the 13th of December. No. It's the last sitting day for the Victorian Parliament, okay, for 2017. I'll come back sometime in February, I assume, possibly March. We'll find out. Now, at midday on Wednesday the 13th of December, we have organised a Defend and Extend Public Housing rally. And we've been holding these rallies since October 2016. Some have been reasonably attended. Some have been poorly attended. But the fact that we have been part of a movement, and we've been at the apex of that movement, to both defend and extend public housing, because Defend and Extend Public Housing was formed. We were approached when public interest before corporate interest was approached. That's right, was approached by Friends of Public Housing Victoria to assist them in bringing this issue to the public's attention. Now, this is one issue that we have had extraordinary success with, but we need to continue to push the envelope to ensure that before the 24th of November next year, the Victorian state government turns its back on its social community housing program, turns its back on its efforts to privatise the public housing sector. So, what have we achieved in the past 12 months? People saying, oh, Joe, I can't be bothered, nothing ever changes, it's all too hard. So what has a tiny, minuscule group of activists achieved in the last 12 months? We have stopped the Labor government from giving away public housing titles to the private sector. They're going to have a big giveaway. Big giveaway. They've stopped because they haven't been seen as nice. Giving away public housing titles to the community and social housing sector, which then they can use to actually raise money to increase their empire. We have dramatically slowed down the Victorian Labor government's plans to outsource the management of public housing. What they want trying to do with group homes, they want to do with public housing. Wash your hands of the responsibility of providing a roof over people's heads. We have seen the Victorian Legislative Council initiate a Legislative Council inquiry into the Labor government's public housing renewal program. If you go to the Legislative Council site, you will see the submissions that have been made. And on the eve of the Northcote by-election on the 18th of November, that's the 17th of November, the Legislative Council blocked the Victorian Labor Party's government public housing renewal program. You know, the Ashwood site was about to be renewed with these so-called private-public partnerships, where all the gifts go to the private sector and the public sector gets, a few substandard, a bit of substandard accommodation. And they claim they're going to increase public housing by 10%. They never tell you how big it is. So, 4 things. So that if there had been no campaign to defend and extend public housing, none of this would have happened. So I'm encouraging you to join us at midday on Wednesday, the 13th of December. Put it in your diary on the steps of Parliament House, Spring Street. Put it on your diary, the last sitting day. And every time we have a rally, we do send an email to all the 88 members of the lower house, the Legislative Assembly, and the 40 members of the Legislative Council, inviting them to come down and speak to us. Now, most of them tend to ignore us because, we're just rabble. People like you and me, to these people, we are rabble. We're dog shit. But the thing about dog shit lying about is that sometimes you step in it, and they've stepped in it big time. And we're not going to go away, and we're going to continue this campaign till the 24th of November next year, and we're going to build on this campaign, and we're going to ensure that this government makes major changes to its public housing policies. Now, I stood in the Northcote by-election as an independent candidate and directed my preferences to the Green for one reason: to whittle down the majority of the Andrews-led Labor government to one. That's in the legislative. They have a majority in the Legislative Council to one. I want them to know that if they continue on this trajectory of pushing social and community housing and destroying, not building, and destroying public housing, that their political future is in doubt. Because I can assure them that the Greens will hold the balance of power after the next state election on the 24th of November. And currently, after a little bit of confusion amongst many sectors of the Greens, currently, the idea of public housing is first and foremost amongst the Victorian Greens. It's an issue. It's a growing issue. But in order to highlight that this is an issue, we need you at this rally next Wednesday, midday to 1 p.m. So why should you bother? You can say, I don't live in public housing, I've never lived in public housing, and I'll never live in public housing. Or you can say, well, I rent, I'm working. Why should I be bothered to become involved in a public housing campaign if I'm renting? Or I am lucky. The bank's given me money to mortgage my life for the next 40 years so that I can live under a roof where I can actually do my own gardening and put a nail in the wall, paint it as I like. Or, even if you're an investor, a strong public housing sector is good for you. And so how does it work? We live in a capitalist-driven economy where the public sector has almost been legislated out of existence. And these assault on group homes, which are publicly owned, and what's left of the public housing sector, these are assaults on the idea that we as a community, through government, should provide access to basic necessary resources to people, that we don't just leave to the private sector. Because when you leave to the private sector, as we've seen with the banking sector, which is about to face a Royal Commission, when you leave it to them, what we see is increased prices. That's what we see. So a strong public housing sector based on the idea, and it's a simple idea, of using the $6 billion, which is collected every year from stamp duty, which is it's just a tax which is levied by the government on people who buy property, right? Stamp duty, $6 billion last financial year. If you divert that money to the public housing sector, you divert $1 billion for, say, ongoing repairs and management, $5 billion to spot purchase homes across the state. You could spot purchase anywhere between 20 to 25,000 residential units every year. You could house at least another 70 to 100,000 people, new people in public housing, within 12 months. Within a year, within a decade, you would have over 25% of Victorians living in secure public housing, which is basically based on the concept of that you only need to pay 25% of your income to access that housing, not 50 or 60%. So a strong public housing sector puts downward pressure on rents, puts downward pressure on entry-level home prices, and this is where investors should be jumping up and down, it actually improves social cohesion. Less crime, especially petty crime. Think about it. Public housing is everyone's business. So if you are young, if you're old, if you're poor, if you're rich, we'd like to see you at the rally. Next Wednesday, 13th of December, steps of the Victorian Parliament House. And if you're saying, I'm listening to this in the ACT or South Australia or Tasmania or Western Australia or Queensland or New South Wales and we don't have anything like that there, well, take a leaf out of our book. Look at what we've done. Go to the Facebook page, Defend and Extend Public Housing. Go to the Facebook page. Look at what we've done. See what you can do. You can do it. It's simple. If I can do it, you can do it. I've got nothing special here. I haven't got any guns. I haven't got any bombs. I'm not in Parliament. I've got no influence. I don't have the Murdoch media knocking at my door here. I mean, I'm just a piddly little person broadcasting from a piddly little community radio station into the community radio network. But at least we have something positive to say, unlike the hate mongers we see growing amongst us every day. Now, I do love... Look, I love the Groper. He's my hero. He is my hero. You know why I love him? Because he's so transparent. 20%. Company tax down to 20%. Wow. That means they have to find 1.2 trillion. We're not talking about billions anymore. We're talking about trillions over the next 10 years to pay for those tax cuts. And how do you do that? You rip off the poor. You rip off those people, who can least afford to be ripped off. And you pocket the profits. Love it. Love it. A great recipe for social dislocation. Reform. Revolution even. Keep it up, Groper, President Groper of the US of A, the land of the brave and the free. And also, the Groper's gone even one better. He's opening up hundreds of thousands of acres, millions of acres of public land, public parks, turning them into development opportunities. Love it. If only he came to Australia, if only his policies were... well, they are, aren't they, when you think about it? All right. So you can see. So what are Australia's corporations saying? We want the Groper's tax cuts. It's good for us. Not good. It's not good for human life, but it's good for us. All right. This is the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia, the Community Radio Network. My name's Joseph Toscano, I'm hosting today's program. You like a flutter? Look, I like a flutter, okay? I'm weak. You get to an age in life where the only way you're going to make money is to put a few bob on Tats Lotto. So if you like a flutter, you're not alone in the land of the brave. Well, no, sorry. We're not the land of the brave and the three. We're the land of the fair go, mate. Okay? You're not alone. You're not alone. Did you know that in the last financial year that Australians lost $24 billion on gambling? No wonder there are so many ads on television and radio about, and newspapers and social media about gambling. They lost $24 billion. No, they didn't win. Some people won. But as a whole, as a community, we lost $24 billion. And king of the gambling community are the pokies. The poker machines. Australians lost collectively $12.1 billion on pokies. $5.2 billion at the casino. $2.9 billion at the races. And we even lost $1.9 billion of that sum of my money in the lotto. And the new kid in the block, sports betting, hasn't even managed to nudge $1 billion. They're about $920 million. Extraordinary, isn't it? Now, when you think that the national budget is around $440 billion, that means about 5 cents of every dollar which is earned in this country goes back to the gambling industry. That's $24 billion. Extraordinary. Just extraordinary, but, you know, we can just continue to let it happen. Oh, well, people want to lose. And see, that's the tragedy. There's nobody saying, well, there are some people saying, well, this isn't quite kosher, is it, you know? Losing $24 billion in 1 year just doesn't seem to be right. Especially when most of the pokie venues are in poorer suburbs, because obviously rich people go to the casino, don't they? As well as poor people, obviously. All right, let's move on. Now, you may not know, there's a little dispute going on at Webdocs in Melbourne, the Maritime Union of Australia, which was formed in 1872, 20 years before the general strike that occurred in Australia in the early 1890s, has got a problem. Melbourne has become the first automated port, fully automated port, or is becoming. And guess what? Union officials are not wanted. Well, a union official has been denied entry because he's failed a security clearance. Now, the current it's quite amazing, just quite amazing. All over the world, we've got these huge cartels which are now monopolising dock work. And what's the first thing they do? You know what the first thing they do is they get rid of the local workers. They bring in overseas workers. They mechanise the place and kind of outsource the running of the port to a third world country where they don't have to pay them very much. You know? So there are workers across the world, from Jakarta to Karachi to Madagascar to Melbourne, who are finding not only are their jobs disappearing, but that anybody who belongs to a trade union doesn't get a job. And even if they get a job and they're a member of a union later on, you find that somehow you can't pass a security clearance. A security clearance which I could pass, hopefully. Just extraordinary. So there is a continuing blockade, and it's a community blockade of the port, because obviously the courts, in their wisdom, have said that the Maritime Union of Australia cannot go within 100 metres of Webdoc. So if you are in Melbourne and you would like to support this particular campaign, and they are looking for volunteers, community picketers, to be involved, just go to the dock. 78 Webb, W-E-B-B, Dock Drive in Port Melbourne. 78 Webb, W-E-B-B, Dock Drive in Port Melbourne. Say, hello, I'm here to help. Because this is part of an ongoing pattern. It's just not on the docks. It's everywhere. It's gaining momentum as the trade unions become weaker because of legislation which basically legislates them out of existence. Employers become, more emboldened. They don't want to pay penalty rates. They don't want to pay holiday pay. They just want subcontractors working for them. That's all they want. People they can give a fixed rate to and say, take it or lump it, Take it or lump it, take it or leave it. This is what they want. And we've seen rights and conditions which were won over tens of years, decades of struggle, hundreds of years of struggle, just disappear overnight. And the Fair Work Commission goes bang, 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 bang. Just stamps the agreement and says, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? No more pesky trade unions involved. No more workers, just individual contractors are responsible for their super, their sick pay, it just goes on and on. Their holiday pay. Mayhem. So, think about it. So if you've got the time, wander down. It's a 24-hour community picket. 78 Webb, W-E-B-B, Dock Drive, Port Melbourne. It's not just about the Melbourne docks. It's about what's happening around this country, where when enterprise bargaining agreements begin, discussions begin, the first thing the employer says, no unions, no more wage earners, just independent, individual contractors we can screw. Because if they don't do what we tell them, they can piss off. Because that's the way it goes. So this is bigger than the Webb Dock. This is a big struggle across the country. So join them down at Webb Dock, 78 Webb Dock Drive, Port Melbourne, if you're in Victoria. Now, I make it my habit to do, to subject myself to intellectual pain in order to bring facts and figures and ideas to our listeners, Sometimes I do things that I really feel sick about, like looking at a Murdoch-owned newspaper. Sorry, I just vomited over the microphone here. Ugh. Or I actually watch the news, but I've never watched Fox News, and so it's okay. It's okay. And sometimes you glean a little bit of information that's useful. Now, I am so proud of this country. I'm so proud to be Dinky Di. I'm so proud to have been born here. Because in the land of that's New Zealand, in the land of Oz, the land down under, CEOs, that's Chief Executive Officers, earn 78, that's right, times more than the average wage. So their average wage for a CEO is about $4.7 million. Now, I'm sure you won't see $4.7 billion in your lifetime or your children's lifetime. But there are people in the society that are averaging $4.7 million. Sorry about that. $4.7 million. All right? Now, to earn $4.7 million, you'd have to earn about, about 90,000, I think, 95,000 a week. Nice work if you can get it. So the average CEO's salary is 78 times than the average weekly wage, which is, I think these days, around $1,200. All right? And we say, isn't that good? Isn't that good? The people who exploit us get rewarded. Just extraordinary. And we say, well, Jay, they tell me that's the way it is. You can't fight City Hall. Just go to bed. Forget about it. It'll be fine. Well, it's not fine. And that's the reason they get away with it, because that's what we say. We say, it's fine. It's fine. Well, it's not fine. These are just CEOs. CEOs. I'm sure they don't get me started. Just to let you know that little piece of news, you may find it boring, you may find it interesting, but you will know that you are being ripped off. You do that. And it gets better. Because you see, one way the trade unions have been able to continue to exist is because every time you see an industry super fund ad, that's a trade union ad. Now, the federal government has been trying very hard to break the power of the industry super funds, although, as you know, the industry super funds almost always have a better return than the privately owned funds. So the privately owned funds have been knocking on the door of the federal government saying, Malcolm, we know you got all that money down at the, in the Indies, down in the Caribbean. Well, couldn't you help us out, Can't you help us out, mate? These industry super funds, they're killing us, mate. Their returns are always better because they don't have to make a profit. It's a non-profit organisation. So Malcolm, being a businessman, a little bit like the Groper, says, yes, look, what we could do is we'll try to change the legislation so we impose independent, you like that, independent directors on the industry super boards to ensure that these people do not, under any circumstances, actually assist people. We don't want that to happen. Sets a bad example for everybody else. But guess what? It's been blocked. They haven't got the support in the Senate. So their plans to destroy the trade union-run industry superannuation funds are currently on the back burner. But think about it. Do you want to invest your money with some private organisation that needs to make a profit and an increasing profit every year from the money that you've given them to invest on your behalf? Or you're going to take 5%. Think about it. It's just extraordinary. So everywhere you look, you see all these legislative attempts to make things better. Not for us, but for those who have power and wealth. You have tax cuts, helps the corporate sector. You squeeze people on New Start allowances, helps the corporate sector. You privatise everything that's not nailed down and use a claw hammer to rip out the nails of that stuff that is tied down, helps the corporate sector. And you think to yourself, what's the purpose of government? Is the purpose of government to look after the interests of the people who elect that government? Or is the purpose of government to make extraordinary profits for unaccountable corporations whose major responsibility is to their major shareholders? And I know what the purpose of the Australian government is. And if you're really good, I will share it with you. The purpose of the Australian government is, first and foremost, to promote corporate interests before public interests. Every available indicator, corporate interests before public interests. That's the policy. That's been the policy for the last 40 years. And it's good to see that it's working so well for the people of this country. Good to see. I'm so excited for them. So excited. Have you noticed the new economy? I love the new economy. Whether it's those people riding bicycles and bikes with food on their backs, whether it's people who are, in their own taxis racing around providing a service, whether it's people with an extra apartment or two who like to lease it out, you know. I love it. Love it. Love it. Because the beauty, or Amazon, which has just come into the land of Oz, love them. Great companies. I love all these companies because they are bringing capitalism, the C word, back to its original roots, the 19th century capitalism. No public interference, no trade unions. You know, you don't pay tax in the country you operate in. You don't pay the workers a decent wage. You make them all individual contractors. You rake in the cash for your shareholders. And you say, what a good boy am I. Little Jack Horner putting his thumb in the pie and pulled out a plum and said, what a good boy am I. And I love the Airbnb story because the great thing about the Andrews-led Labor government and all the other state governments around the country, if a corporation wants something, a corporation gets it. Time and time again. So, if you think it's a new smart way to do business, no, it's the old way to do business. You ensure that your workers can't collectively bargain. Then you give them, you know, when you feed them, it's not the healthiest of stuff. And the list goes on and on and on. So, it's good to see that people are beginning to wake up, but the problem is people think, well, what should I do? Should I just sit there, cross my fingers and hope it'll all go away? Well, it won't go away. And talking about things going away, I'd like to invite you to something, because every week we are involved in things. And we're not involved in things for the sake of being involved in things. We are involved in things to change society, to improve expectations, to ensure that public interests are put before corporate interests. And just like to remind you that if you want to join public interest before corporate interests, it costs nothing. All you've got to do is download the application form from info@pipsy.net, info@pipsy.net. And if you can't do that, you can always write to us at Post Office Box 20, Parkville 3052, and we'll send you out an application form. Or you can leave an address and a name on 0439 395 489, 0439 395 489, and we will send you out an application form. Very simple. Now, what's happening this Saturday? Well, again, it's in Melbourne. I don't know why it's always in Melbourne. So have you got stuff happening in your part of the world that you want us to let people know about? Give us a tingle. Email us the information, because the Anarchist World This Week is broadcast Australia-wide via the Community Radio Network. It's also podcast. You can access the net anytime you like. Very simple. So this Saturday, well, it starts on Friday at 6:30pm on Friday night. That's right. On Friday night, we will be holding, that's right, we, not me, the West Papuan community are holding a opening, because this is Sampari week, very important week for the West Papuan community, and you're all invited. And you're all invited to become involved. So what's all this about West Papua, I hear you say? What's all this stuff about West Papua? Why should I be interested? Well, I mean, we've all heard about what's happening in Syria and Yemen, and we're all very familiar with it, and we're disgusted, obviously, by what's happening, but we're familiar with it. But how many Australians know that West Papua is actually 78 kilometres from Australia? 78 kilometres. That's not even the width of Sydney or Melbourne. 78 kilometres. And that West Papua is an Indonesian province. It's less than, as I said, 80 kilometres from Australia. Over the past 60 years, over 500,000, that's right, 500,000, not many, just 500,000 West Papuans have died as a direct result of the Indonesian colonisation of West Papuan land. Simple. Simple. Today, in 2017, West Papuans barely make up 50% of the population. A transmigration program sponsored by the Indonesian government has seen tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Indonesians coming across to West Papua and being given land. Given land sounds like the Victorian Labor Party's public housing policy. Given land, which has been stolen from the West Papuans. And on every available social and economic indicator in 2017, West Papuans languish far behind migrants from other parts of Indonesia. And at the centre of this is that mountain of gold which has been mined by the United States-owned Freeport mine. Fortunately for the West Papuans in West Papua and the refugee community around the world, fortunately, we care. We support them. 3.5 years ago, the West Papuan Rent Collective was formed. And the Rent Collective was formed to raise the rent for a West Papuan office which could be used as a hub, an international hub, to promote the struggle for independence in West Papua. And that office is located at Suite 211, 838 Collins Street in Docklands. Office hours 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. And if you want to visit, drop in and have a chat with the volunteers. And everybody in that office is a volunteer. Nobody gets paid. It's not like a lot of charities we have these days. Obviously, well, this is not a charity. If you want to pop into the office, give them a ring on 04 20 250 389. Now, everybody in the Rent Collective pays $1 a day, $30 a month, into a bank account. You can pay the money anonymously, you can put in a cheque, you can do it by, the internet banking, the list goes on, as long as their money gets into the account. And on Saturday, the 9th of December, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m, at the Australian Catholic University Art Gallery at 26 Brunswick Street in Fitzroy, the West Papuan Rent Collective end-of-year gathering occurs. And I'm inviting every listener to this program to the Rent Collective party. And you know why I'm inviting you there? Because we need new members for the Rent Collective. We're about $1,000 short every month in the rent. And if it wasn't for the generosity of the late Mr. Trevor Grant, the West Papuan office would have closed down 6 months ago. So we are now eating to the money which was left by Trevor Grant in order to help, raise a deposit for a permanent office for the West Papuan community in Australia. So it's not about just Australia. The West Papuans are very poor. They're refugees, minimal resources. They're involved in this continuing struggle against Indonesian authorities. And they need an office space, which we've provided. And that office space has been instrumental in promoting their struggle right up to the United Nations, where the Decolonisation Committee is about to look at the situation. So as I said, this Saturday, 9th of December, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m, at the Art Gallery at 26 Brunswick Street in Fitzroy. And why an art gallery? Because from Friday the 8th of December, right through the week, there are events all day, which you can get access to. There are events all day. So you don't have to ring anybody to turn up. Lunch is provided by Dapul Sampari. And guess what's for lunch? I can't believe this. Starts at 1 p.m. You're invited to attend. Try before you die. Not die. Try before you buy. If you like it, well, then you can become a member of the West Papuan Rent Collective. If you don't like it, fine. At least you've experienced it. Wow. Sorong cocktail and cassava crackers. Papuan fish, rice chap chai, which is vegetables, and some bowl of chilli sauce. Good to see. Now, at 2 p.m, the real business starts because the West Papuan community reports back to the Rent Collective what they've done, right? So there'll be a report given. There'll be a report from the office, there'll be a report from the Women's Office. As the convener of the West Papuan Independence Movement Rent Collective, there will be a Rent Collective badge ceremony. So if you are a Rent Collective member and you haven't received your badge, come along. And it gets better. It's a little bit like those ads on TV. So that any person or Rent Collective member who brings the most new members to the end-of-year gathering at the Sampari Art Exhibition at 26 Brunswick Street in Fitzroy gets 2 bottles of wine from South Bernard in Queensland. Konpari Maru wine. Incredible. And at 2:25, Jacob Rumbiak, West Papuan Foreign Minister, who will be giving a tribute to my late wife Ellen Jose, and will be speaking about what happened at the United Nations General Assembly in New York in 2017. And don't forget, after that there's the Change the West Papuan, the musical, which producer Izzy Brown has organised. So it's up to you. You can watch TV, you can put your money in the pokies, you can buy some new clothes, why don't you buy for Christmas your friend a West Papuan Rent Collective, join the West Papuan Rent Collective on their behalf. We'll give them a little card. You don't have to buy a goat or a cow. Just join the West Papuan Rent Collective. So, come down. Seriously. Saturday the 9th of December, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m, ACU Art Gallery, 26 Brunswick Street in Fitzroy. You've been listening to the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia via the Community Radio Network. This program has been streaming live on 3cr.org.au. That's 3cr.org.au. You can write to us at Post Office Box 20, Parkville 3052. Post Office Box 20, Parkville 3052. You can go to the website anarchistmedia.org. Want to see what I'm doing, what activities we're involved in? Go to my personal Facebook page, Toscano, the number 4, the public. Toscano for the public. Pictures will be up regarding the Eureka celebration. There's lots of other information there. Want to join the Rent Collective? Go to the same Facebook page. All the information is there. You don't have to don't ring anybody if you need to come on the 29th. On the 9th of December, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m, turn up, 26 Brunswick Street, Fitzroy. You can leave messages on 0439 395 489. Don't forget the Defend and Extend Public Housing rally on the steps of the Victorian Parliament House at midday on Wednesday the 13th of December. Don't forget the picket line down at 72, the community picket line at 78 Webb Dock Drive in Port Melbourne. So, although the year's coming to an end, we are still marching, walking, tripping forward. And I didn't mean that trip either. Thank you once again for listening to the Anarchist World This Week on your local community radio station, courtesy of the Community Radio Network. This program has been streaming live on 3cr.org.au. My name is Joseph Toscano. Go to the Defend and Extend Public Housing Facebook page. Join in the discussion. Go to the Anarchist Media Institute. Download the application form for PIP's public interest before corporate interest. Become a member. Download it from info@pipsy.net. Thank you once again for listening to the Anarchist World This Week on your local community radio station. This program has been broadcast courtesy of the Community Radio Network, which broadcasts to over over 150 community radio stations belong to the Community Radio Network. Thank you once again for listening to the Anarchist World this week on your local community radio station. Listen in next week.
Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction.
An analysis you'll never hear anywhere else. Anarchist World this week. Australia's sacred cow slaughterhouse. 10 a.m. every Wednesday. Listen to the Anarchist World this week for an up-to-date analysis of local, national and international events.
Poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord, yeah.